the most transparent one is Steal This Beer. I've talked about it before. It's one of my favorite podcasts. I listen to it every time it comes out. I've been on it a couple times, and I've been on it because I like the podcast. I didn't ask to go on it. It just so happened that I ended up going on it. But he talks to everybody. And by he, I mean essentially John Hall, previously of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, and Augie Carton of Carton Brewing. They started a podcast a couple years, I think it's 4 years ago. I actually don't know how long it is now. But the format and the way it works is perfect. Augie is Augie. I can't even explain the dude. He's just himself. And he's very opinionated. He's very in the mindset of not being wrong. But at the same time, if he is wrong, he would say he's wrong. But I don't think he's ever said he's wrong. I don't know. But he's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Strong-willed? Pig-headed? I don't know. But then you have John, which is almost like the ombudsman. Is that what they call them? The arbitrator of the podcast, which is like basically keeping him on his rails. I don't mean to say it's all Augie. He talks a good portion of the show. But John gets his fair share of sparring in. But it's like that kind of a boxing match where you see, a fighter constantly punching, but then you have the other one kind of strategically placing strategic shots, and that person, not saying wins, but ends up being a draw. It's a good balance between the two. They're very different people with a very similar sensibility. And the way they host a podcast, and the way they approach it, just makes sense, at least in my brain. The shtick of what they do is they have somebody come on, whether it be industry people, whether it be some schlub like this guy, whether it be a brewer, whatever. You have to bring on beer, and basically they kind of interview you over about 40 minutes and ask you questions. And during that time, they drink beers, kind of like I do my mystery beers. They drink the beers you brought on. They have no idea what they are. They're blindly presented to them in black glasses, so they can't even see them. And they, kind of break down the beers and talk about it. And they, guess what the beer is and do all that stuff. But the whole time they're trying to weave a conversation throughout it. And that's the reason why the show appeals to me, is because it's, and I subscribe to this in my podcast, in that they're trying to have a conversation. They're not trying to do like, okay, we have a list of questions, let's get through all these questions before our allotment is up. It's more like, I'm sure they go into it with questions they want to ask, but it's more to keep the conversation on track as opposed to be, like I said, a question and answer session. So the conversations they have, whether it be somebody super like on the hipster end of things to somebody who just started a brewery, tend to come off very, how do I put it? If the Sour Hour is a bunch of guys busting balls, and then you have, Jimmy's podcast having that kind of smoking a joint thing, this is kind of like somewhere floating in between. It's organic. It's meaningful. There's fuckduckery. There's fart jokes and all kinds of shit involved too. So it's definitely not the most pretentious thing, but it can hit on pretentious notes. That's the best part about it, is that it's not scripted. It's not faked. And it gets to points where sometimes you'll get one and someone has an agenda and they could sniff it out from the get, and it's just a bunch of quick, hey, let's drink this beer and talk real quick and get up. But then sometimes you really get some magic in there. So it's kind of one of those ones where a lot of the ways that I like brewers and how they make beers, the ones that clinically do it and repeat the same beer over and over again, that's fantastic. And I love that. That they can hit the same mark, but the ones that really turn me on are the ones that take chances. And it seems like that podcast is not forced, and they do take chances with who they talk to and the questions they ask. And that's the other end of the spectrum, is that they ask questions a lot of other places or other people wouldn't. And that they, ask stuff that, might make you feel a little uncomfortable. But I think that's where good conversation, I think that's where it comes from in general. So that's my 5 favorite. There's a